The Age of Fire was founded by the old gods, sustained by the linking of the fire. But the gods are no more, and the all-powerful fire deserveth a new heir. Our Lord of Hollows, it shall be, who weareth the true face of mankind.
Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silvermont, and this is a plot summary for Dark Souls 3. This is how I believe the events surrounding the main story of the game went down. But the story and events of Dark Souls are not so clear-cut and set in stone. I'm not saying this is exactly what happened, because nobody can know for certain. That isn't the point of the game or the point of this video. But this video will contain my personal thoughts on how the story went down, and I will invite you to share your own thoughts down in the comments below. But that said, let's get started, so sit back and enjoy. As the third game in the series, Dark Souls 3 has a fairly well-established universe at this point. In the beginning, in the Age of Ancients, the world was unformed, a grey land of dragons. But then came fire. Where did this fire come from, and what is it? Well, our understanding of that is even less than we know of the origins of our own fire, the Big Bang. But in this sense, it's not too important where it came from. In the midst of this fire, however, primeval beings found souls. Chief amongst these beings was Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, the first Lord. And in Dark Souls, lords and kings are interchangeable, but they are both extremely important. And as our first Lord, Gwyn foresaw the end of this age, his age, the Age of Fire. To stave it off, he offered himself to the First Flame to link the fire and extend the age of the gods. In essence, you could say that Gwyn burned himself alive as kindling to keep the dark at bay. Now, in Dark Souls 2, it was established that this is a cycle. Lords and kingdoms rise and fall. Whether or not the chosen undead from the first Dark Souls linked the fire ultimately matters very little. If they did not, somebody else will. And moreover, the souls of these lords were immortal. They would return to the world after a time. A kingdom will rise and the Lord's souls will return, and the fire will be linked, one way or the other. But what if it isn't? What if no hero, no champion arrives in time to link the fire? That is the story of Dark Souls 3. At the start of our story, the fire is fast fading. No hero has linked the flame, so the call is put out. The bell of awakening is rung, and the Lords of Cinder are awakened. Who are the Lords of Cinder? Supposedly they are the beings who linked the fire, Gwyn, of course, being the first Lord of Cinder. The chosen undead from the first Dark Souls could likewise potentially be a Lord of Cinder, so Lair of Astora as well should he make his way to the kiln. The bearer of the curse might well be yet another, but we cannot know for certain there. And then we have the Lords of Cinder who are known in the third game. Ludlith of Corland, a tiny being. Yorm the Giant, Lord of the Profaned Capital, Saint Aldrich of the Deep, the Abyss Watchers, and of course, the Lord of Lothric. Ludlith, Yorm, Aldrich and the Abyss Watchers were all raised from their graves, presumably tasked with once again linking the fire. Or at the very least, we know that Yorm, Aldrich and the Abyss Watchers were raised. Ludlith is another matter entirely. We do not see his grave, or indeed him rising from it. All we have is his word. But why? Why has the fire not been linked? The blame for that would fall, if not solely, then at least largely, on Prince Lothric, of a holy bloodline perhaps descending directly from Gwyn. Lothric was groomed from birth to be a Lord of Cinder, to link the fire. But is there really anything special about his bloodline? Where have we heard that before? The chosen undead? Chosen by who? If you cast your mind back to Dark Souls, you might remember that there was nothing special about the chosen undead. The title itself was a sham, even if the person behind it was not. The chosen undead was not chosen, they were simply the one who fulfilled that prophecy by pushing on through trials that others had failed. In essence, whoever got to that point would be the chosen undead. And who was it that set the chosen undead on that path? Why, none other than the toothy serpent, Franked. and it seems he is still up to his old tricks all these years later. At some point or another, Frampt appears to have come before the holy bloodline of Lothric, and espoused the virtues of linking the fire. I believe it is entirely possible there was nothing that special about the Holy King. But if an angel visits you and claims you are chosen and special, is that not what we as humans wish to hear? To be vindicated in our belief that we are more than just another head in the crowd? That there is something special deep inside of us? Like the farm boy who is in truth a prince or destined to be some hero. Perhaps Hawkwood put it best.
Even accursed undead want to believe they're special, it seems.
We know that angels are somewhat prevalent in Lothric. The winged knights swore themselves to the angels after all. And considering the statues we can find of Frampt in Lothric Castle somewhat resemble angels, it seems a logical conclusion to me. Of course, it could not be Frampt, but instead Karth. But it seems to me far more likely that an angel who wants you to link the fire would be Frampt instead of Karth. But what happened? Because something caused Lothric to reject this. Worship of the angels itself was considered heresy, even by the three pillars of Lothric, the knights, scholars, and the high priestess. Who could it have been? Who would oppose Frampt and the linking of the fire? Karth? But we know not if Karth is still alive or present in any way. We know that Yuria herself knows of Karth and wishes to continue his legacy, but her dialogue is so vague concerning him that he might no longer be present in Londor, where Yuria herself hails from. But Karth never sought out others in such a way. He did not present himself before us, but would rather await those who might find him by chance. But there is someone else. Someone who sought out undead and questioned them on their purpose. Gave them cause to doubt the linking of the fire.
All men trust fully the illusion of life. But is this so wrong? A construction, a facade, and yet a world full of warmth and resplendence. Young Hollow, are you intent on shattering the yoke, spoiling this wonderful falsehood?
Lord Aldir, scholar of the First Sin and older brother to King Vendrick. But where am I getting that from, you might be wondering? Well, from a spell, Soulstream. Sorcery imparted by the first of the scholars. When Lothric and the Grand Archives were but young, the first of the scholars doubted the linking of the fire and was alleged to be a private mentor to the royal prince. Now, the word scholar alone isn't enough to form a connection with Aldir, is it? But you know me, I wouldn't form a theory on such tangential evidence. There is another connection with Aldir hidden in this spell, the name itself. In Dark Souls 2, there is a spell known as Soul Geyser, but in the Japanese version, it is known as Soulstream, and the description reads as follows. This blasphemous spell is the legacy of Lord Aldir. I would say that's quite good evidence, wouldn't you? At this point, I think it's fairly safe to assume that the scholar, alleged to be a private mentor of Prince Lothric, was either Aldir himself or a close follower of Aldir's teachings. Who else would be able to impart Aldir's legacy, both in the form of a powerful sorcery and the questions he once posed the bearer of the curse? It seems he posed these same questions to Prince Lothric, for as you no doubt remember, Aldir cannot be destroyed in Dark Souls 2. He will challenge the bearer of the curse, certainly, but the bearer of the curse does not claim Aldir's soul, and Aldir lingers on after that fight, no matter the outcome. So that is what I believe happened. Frampt posed as an angel and convinced the bloodline of Lothric to give themselves to the fire. Yet Aldir caused Lothric to doubt this cause, and eventually the prince gave up on linking the fire entirely.
Mind you, the mantle of Lord interests me none. The fire-linking curse, the legacy of lords, let it all fade into nothing. Ill-starred are they who take the throne. I shall not stand among them.
As for his reasoning, we can't know for certain, but again, that's not too important for the time being. Either way, Prince Lothric refused to link the fire. which seems to have led to a civil war in Lothric Castle. The rotund winged knights who were sworn to Frampt pitted against the more slender knights who near resemble a cross between the Balder and Drakeblood knights of prior games. And as it happens, the same banners wielded by these Lothric knights can be seen quite curiously in Archdragon Peak, wherein dwell the Drakeblood knights. Perhaps Lothric ordered the execution of all the winged knights, and any who would defend the heavenly messengers. But that certainly seems to explain the scenes of battle that litter the High Wall and castle proper. There is one winged knight in particular who is impaled with several Lothric knight weapons, but more importantly, this has also led to the Bell of Awakening bringing Yorm, Aldrich, and the Abyss Watchers back to some form of life. But they didn't remain on their thrones. They did not actively pursue the linking of fire. As for why, Yorm appears disinterested in further sacrifice. Aldrich seems far more interested in his visions of the deep sea, and the Abyss Watchers, who can say? Were they on their way to the fire when they were corrupted by the Abyss? Aldrich by something else? Who can say? But this then leads to the Unkindled, including our character, to rise. Our duty? To bring the lords back to their thrones, by force, if needs be. And once Yorm, Aldrich, the Abyss Watchers, and Prince Lothric are forcibly contained to their thrones, along with Ludlith, the Ashen One is transported to a dreamscape, a vision of the kiln of the first flame in a ruined land. Or is it no dream? Is that reality and everything else the illusion? Well, who knows. But sitting by the bonfire, the Ashen One will encounter the Soul of Cinder, a deific manifestation of the Lords of Cinder, those who have given themselves to the flame over the years, throughout the cycles. The final guardian of the bonfire. Does the spirit of the chosen undead rest within this lord? What about the bearer of the curse? Well, if you believe it so, then it is surely the case. Once brought into a critical state, out is drawn the manifestation of the very first lord, Gwyn. And upon the Soul of Cinder's defeat, the Ashen One has three choices. Attempt to link the fire, allow the Firekeeper to seize the flame, and the Ashen One can likewise seize it from her afterwards if they so choose. Or usurp the fire, as Yuria of Londor urges. As with so much in Dark Souls, these endings are somewhat ambiguous and vague, open to interpretation. As this is perhaps the last of Dark Souls we'll see, we might not even know where these endings lead. But we still have the expansion content to add to the story, and perhaps to add to the endings. And what will we see in these expansions? Personally, I would not be at all surprised if we learn more about Aceros, and in particular his child, Ocelot. That is to say nothing about Frampt and Karth. Either way, it won't be too long before we find out, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of surprises in store. I look forward to discussing it with you guys. Until then, however, you take care, and let me know what you think in the comments below.
Nameless, accursed undead, unfit even to be cinder. And so it is that ash seeketh embers.